Board Member Jeff Morgan, a second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and turn the timer. Are we starting with Kurt, or do you want to go ahead and get started?
Let's just let Kurt start so we can get started with our program. And it was a good trip. We learned a lot. We want to share some of those things with you. And if we have some time at the end, I'll make some comments. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. President Baldwin, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. We're here to propose an arts integration model for two of our elementary schools. And the people you see before you are mainly the committee that's been working on the processes and so forth. So if we can start just by introducing everybody, if everyone could go around and introduce themselves.
I'm Amy McGee. I'm the instructional coach at Enchanted Hills.
I'm Stephen Herrera. I'm the assistant principal at Enchanted Hills.
Jennifer Bartley, I'm the principal at Enchanted.
Mark Sanchez, I'm a paramedic in San Diego State.
Beth Marcus, assistant principal at San Diego State.
Kurt DeSoto, I'm the principal at San Diego State.
Deanna Gonzalez. I'm the instructional coach at San Diego State.
So I think it'd be a good idea to start on the next slide. Just a reminder about what is this thing called arts integration. And I know I proposed or mentioned just this to the board in the past, but we operate under one of the many definitions of arts integration. And the one we adhere to is the Kennedy Center model of arts integration, or the definition, which is arts integration is an approach to teaching in which students construct and demonstrate understanding through an art form. Students engage in a creative process which connects an art form to another subject area and meets evolving objectives in both. So the short of it is you take an art form, you take another content area, you teach the other content area through the art form, but the students get better at both at the same time. So the next slide, it differs, it's different than other, an arts integration curriculum is a little bit different than other curricula. And these are three examples. Arts' curriculum is like band, choir, orchestra, visual arts, dance, drama, the things you would find a class in. Arts enhanced curriculum is a curriculum that uses an art form, but the art form is used, or the end goal is to teach the other content area. So you might use the ABC song to teach the alphabet. You don't expect the students to get better at melody and rhythm and vocal technique. You expect them to learn their ABCs. And an arts integration curriculum, as we just said before, you take an art form, a content area, they're evolving objectives in both. And of course, this is all different than the GBC we already have in place. One major misconception of arts integration is that it supplants what's going on. That is not the case. It is simply an approach to teaching content and curricula, other curricula. There's no, we're doing arts integration, therefore we'll have to cut back on this or do this. It's simply an approach to instruction. Several of us went to Denver, many of us in this room went to Denver in early September to visit two arts integration schools, the Belmar School of Integrated Arts in Lakewood, Colorado, and the Charles Burrell School of Visual and Performing Arts in Aurora. These are the folks that went. And we have board members, the superintendent, people from district office, parents, teachers, administrators from the school sites. So it was a good group. We spent most of our time at Belmar, where we did a tour. We had an introduction by the staff there. We met with parents. We even engaged in some professional development after the school day. I think it was a long day, but it's a very informative day. And Charles Burrell, we just had a very brief visit to look at their school. So most of what we're looking at is from Belmar, their approach to this. So the next slide. Some of the takeaways from the visits to Colorado, we saw really high student engagement, student self-regulation through their behavior program, which we'll talk about in a minute. Much student collaboration, student explanation of their learning. They could vocalize and articulate what they were learning and how they were learning it. We saw alignment of arts integration in the existing curriculum. Lack of negative behavior, that was pretty evident, especially at Belmar. Most of all, a lot of joyful teaching, a lot of joyful learning. So also, Jenna Schnell, Kirk DeSoto and I went last spring to visit these schools, and there's There is a picture gallery from last spring that has a lot of good stuff, thanks to Mr. DeSoto, taking a lot of pictures. So if you got a couple of hours to kill, go ahead and visit that. But there's some wonderful pictures there, of especially with student artwork on the walls, how it integrates into other subject matters, etc. Next slide. At Belmar, they do two things, and we'll talk more about this and how it affects what we're proposing. But two of their emphases are acting right and reading art. So acting right is a behavior program that is based on drama, the art of drama. It was written by Sean Lane. He's a dramatic artist. He's done a lot of work in the schools, but he wrote this book. Several people have it here today. But the program, the key components are that behavior, it's approaching behavior and realizing that behavior is a literacy. It has to be taught. That if you expect certain behaviors, you need to teach those behaviors, which is similar to other behavioral programs. But sometimes we tend to react to behavior instead of teaching it and then letting it emerge and adopting it to the classroom. Also, the program focuses, has students create a calm body for themselves, a focused mind, and balancing the emotions that come up during the school day. Also, the use of tableaus for understanding and assessment. The Acting Right Behavior Program culminates in students doing a tableau, which is setting their body into an image with others, demonstrating something like the water cycle. They may put themselves in an artistic form, frozen, and then explain what they're doing to show understanding and to assess. The other program that we saw at Belmar is reading art, and this is where students are given a piece of art to look at and talk about before they go to the written word or another subject matter. It's using art to introduce a subject. This engages students who may not be comfortable with the written word. It also gives students, it activates prior knowledge and gets them thinking about the subject before you jump into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. Also, a library of images, as it says, can be used to efficiently build background knowledge, teach content, generate points of inquiry for research, and assess understandings of social studies, science. So those are two of the components. Those are the two non-negotiables at Belmar that the teachers must engage in throughout the week. Some of the data from Belmar School of Integrated Arts, I reached out for some hard data, but they did not come back to me. It's as if they're busy or something trying to run school. But since they introduced arts integration 7-8 years ago, their attendance sits now at 94% average. Chronic absenteeism is 1%. After they introduced the Acting Right program, behavior program, they saw around a 75% reduction in the number of referrals the very next year. One change they went through in 2023 is that several area schools closed down, and so they had a large influx. I think it was about a third, increased their size by about a third, so that they had to, pardon the pun, but they had to integrate artistically those new students to what they're doing with arts integration. And so that it may affect some of their data, but they have noticed since they started this arts integration that their achievement in math and reading has started to climb. I wish I had more hard data for you, but I can try to get some of that for you if you wish. And Jennifer has some interesting data from an experiment her teachers did this year using smart integration concepts from a workshop, a Kennedy Center workshop we held this fall. So
Sure. So our teachers are very excited about integration period. They went to, I can't remember his name, the first one.
Randy Barron.
Randy Barron, and he was talking about inclusion of movement to help with comprehension. So we had a first grade teacher that was very excited about the digestive system and decided to take back the lesson about the digestive system. So she didn't just teach her class, she taught the entire 107 first graders in the front of our school, all about how to integrate the digestive system through a dance. And all 107 of them did the dance and could repeat it 3 days later. So they held on to that topic. But then during the assessment, that was a written assessment that was given, They went from 67% proficient in the retention of that information last year to 94% this year. And we're talking about, this was one lesson, one activity, one day, and just the use of that multimodality in their learning has really significantly improved. And we walked back in a couple weeks later and said, show me the dance, and they could still do it. So they really remember it all the way through and had such a good time doing it. So even just one tiny small sample of what this could look like with 6-year-olds was wildly successful at our school site.
Okay, thank you. So the proposal we have is in several parts. The main component of which is requesting from the board the permission to go ahead and start making plans to not convert, but to transition Giant Hills and San Diego Vista to an arts integration model. So during this proposal, the next few slides, I'll talk about the structure, the timeline, funding, and assessment. So in the next slide, why arts integration? We've talked about, you've seen in some instances why this is a good approach. It offers different ways to approach content, foster student and teacher creativity, get students out of their chairs and moving. One thing I think that's a problem in our schools are students don't use their natural energy to apply it to their learning. So this does get students out of their seats and moving. It's alternative ways for assessment, engages students who may struggle with the written word through an arts activity, but it still lays the groundwork for achievement in reading and writing. So why these two schools? Mainly it's because the leadership is either has background or is very passionate about the arts. Also, the art and music specialists at these schools are very wonderful, very competent, excel teachers in art and music. Unfortunately, we're losing one of them, but I'm sure we'll find a great replacement for her. And also the instructional coaches who we have here today both have a background in art form, which happens to be drama. So that's a plus. Next slide. As part of this proposal, we have a lot in place already that will, upon which we can build. And that's one thing we noticed at Belmar, that they only had half-time art and music teachers. We've always had full-time art and music teachers at all our elementary schools. The students learn art and music every single year. Every single student has art and music every single year, which is a real strength for our district. We also have existing partnerships with the New Mexico Alliance for Responsive Teaching, or NMR. This is our partnership that exists under the umbrella of the Kennedy Center and the Santa Fe Opera. So we've been giving arts integration workshops for the last 12 years, so we can build on that. We have a partnership with the National Dance Institute, or NDI. They come into four of our schools, including San Diego Vista, and do movement with our fourth graders for our 14, 15-week program every year. And then also just the general partnership we have with the Santa Fe Opera, we can lean on that for arts integration models. We also have an arts-friendly community. I think this would be a great sell for our town. I think our district, they're very supportive of the arts, as you all know. And also, we have in place a guaranteed and viable curricula. And that's one thing I want to stress, is that, again, we will not be altering that GVC, but we'll keep that in place. Again, this is just an approach. There will be some tweaking and some coordination of how we're going to have arts integration support the GVC, but I think that can be done quite well. So the next, so the structure and timeline, there are certain, these are the elements that I'll talk about in the next few slides. And I go into some detail in the next few slides, but there's a summary page, so don't worry. Maybe we should just jump to the summary. But so these are, there are 9 points. That's right, 9 points here on the next slide. So we've broken down this proposal in 4 years, this year being year 0. So year 0, the main point of it would be to educate the community, educate the staff at each school, educate you, educate the community, educate parents, teachers, etc. So some of the ideas are to meet with staff at EHE and SVE to explain arts integration, answer questions, meet with parents, Possible presentations to city officials, the Chamber of Commerce, the mayor's office. These are just ideas. Urge teachers of Enchanted Hills and Sandy Vista to attend the existing arts integration workshops we already have in place through our alliance or through our partnership with NM Art. Both schools are doing a book study on Acting Right behavior program, and there is also a component of Acting Right where they can take courses online for a reduced grade. They're offering us a reduced grade for that. We're gonna have to make staffing decisions this year, find out those teachers who want to be part of this, those who do not, and of course, find out which school, where they would like to teach. You need to talk about student transfers, possibly leaving seats open. The idea is that these schools will remain neighborhood schools, but then students across the districts could elect to go into these schools, so we have to decide how many seats to save. Scheduling decisions, possibly. We need to arrange for professional development for the next school year, and maybe have some teaching artists visit and do some professional development this year. In year one, the idea is to implement Acting Right, and that will be the main focus. The author of Acting Right, Sean Lane, in discussions with him, he said, if you're going to have arts integration and the kind of activities that are involved in arts integration, you have to have, the students need to know how to handle that. Because if they're used to sitting in rows and sitting down and not doing a lot of movement, suddenly they're asked to do some movement and engage in these activities and they don't know how to handle it. So having a behavior program that's based on arts integration is a great way to introduce not only arts integration, but just the behaviors that are expected and to be taught. So the idea is that would be the main focus. However, throughout the year, we could still urge teachers to go to NM Art workshops that we'll have in place next year, apply those techniques in the classroom, and start building a repertoire of arts integration approaches that they could use in future years. Professional development, mainly on Acting Right, do some curriculum work where we align, as I said before, align the GBC with these arts integration topics. Site-based decisions on public performances, presentations, and collaborations involving art and music classes would have to be discussed too, as what we would do in future years. In year two, and there's a caveat at the end, I'll tell you at the end. This is the layout, but it is something to change. Year two, continue to work with Acting Right, especially those new teachers that come on board. We have to bring them up to speed. Implement the reading art program that Belmar uses, taking pictures, having discussions with students, etc. That would require some professional development. By the way, both the author of Acting Right and Reading Art, they're part of a consortium of teaching artists called Focus 5. So I'm going to refer to that. But their organization is Focus 5. They offer much professional development in arts integration. Again, continue to work with NM Art workshops, professional development, continue the curriculum work, continue site-based discussions on public performances and presentations, etc. Year three would keep building on Acting Right, Reading Art, the workshops, professional development, continue the curriculum work. The main thing in year three, besides tweaking these other initiatives, would be expecting more public performances in the arts, presentations, collaborations, etc. And when I say collaborations, it's collaborations between the art specialists in the school and maybe classroom or general education teachers to do special projects. So that's the layout. And the next slide is just a quick summary of each year. So basically adding Acting Right year two, starting that, focusing on that, so the school buy-in, and adding something every year, but not too much so it doesn't overwhelm the teachers who are already very, very busy. To be, one thing we have to embrace is that learning, trial and error, and failure are going to happen. And we need to encourage teachers to try things with the idea that if they fail, they won't be written up for it, they won't be chastised for it, but they'll be praised for trying something new in the classrooms. And there are going to be failures, there are going to be experiments that don't work, and throughout these years, we'll probably have to tack and change our tack and maybe do some different things we don't even realize right now in our discussions and in our discussions with other schools who are doing this. So that has to be stressed, is that teachers should be told dare to fail. just make the effort and we'll work with it, because a lot of good things can come out of failure as we know. So funding, there are already some funding mechanisms in place to pay for this. The Fine Arts Education Act for years, as I mentioned, already funds our partnerships with Kennedy Center, Santa Fe Opera, NDI, funds art and music supplies, art and music teacher salaries, art and music teachers professional development. That is already in place, so we can build on that. Operational funds pays for general education teachers' salaries, of course, and school set budgets. The biggest and perhaps only expense would be for professional development. That's going to be the lion's share. I think there is enough in place that we can lean on our existing partnerships, perhaps with a little bit more professional development in certain areas, but especially in year one, that acting right professional development is key to get a good start. Next slide. So during years 0 and 1, we'll explore alternative funding sources. Some of the ideas we thought of course, the ubiquitous grants that are out there, I'm sure. PTO fundraisers, maybe some legislative appropriation, alumni support, film industry. These are just some ideas the committee threw out for possible funding sources. So the next slide, the request would be for over 3 years, would be $50,000 a year for professional development. This might sound hefty, but the $50,000 hopefully would be offset by grants, et cetera, in future years as we help locate those alternative sources of funding. But also, if you look at the scope of what the professional development entails, it'd be for about 175 staff members between the two school sites, approximately 120 hours of professional development. So per hour, it's a pretty good. It also, some of this money would cover some supplies we might need and again, be offset with alternative sources. Sean Lane, again, the author of Acting Right, that would be the main focus. The idea is to have him come out next fall, and he would come out 4 times. He would come out with an introduction, give some homework to the teachers, they would try the classrooms. He would come out a second time, visit both campuses, give feedback, and do that 4 times throughout the year. So we have a lot of visitation from him. It also includes the online training videos that he has for that program. So I think we all agree that professional development is going to be done right. It needs to be consistent. It needs to be ongoing. It needs to be, very, very thought through. And so we don't want a one-off training, or we don't want to train the trainer model. We want the information straight from the horse's mouth. So that'd be a total, of course, $150,000 commitment over the next 3 years. The next slide. Assessing this, we just don't want to do it and hope it works. We need to, for continual improvement, we need to assess every year, possibly every week, what's going on. So some of the ideas to evaluate the success or lack thereof, comparative attendance data from past years to the years where we implement these programs, comparative behavioral data, comparative academic achievement data, surveys for parents, teachers, and students, regular meetings with the steering committee, administrators, staff, et cetera, to evaluate the progress and improve implementation. So again, that goes back to maybe changing course over the next few years as we learn more about this work. And that is it. I don't know if anybody else wants to share anything, or we're open to the board for questions.
Let me share just a few thoughts that we go through the content. Well, that I hope all of you will share kind of what you saw. I'd like to back up just a little bit about the why. Why are we doing this? What's the purpose? Why were we even looking to do this? As I shared with the committee, we thankfully, our student achievement continues to be fairly strong in the state. Happy told me we were number 2. I hate being number 2. hate being number 2. But what she also said with that was that we haven't moved significantly in years. We're hanging on. Thankfully, we have good performance, but we're not improving teaching and learning in our district right now. And so we're flat. And that's really discouraging, because historically we've not been flat. We've continued to move. So I think that's part of it. The other is that here in all our visits across all the schools, the behavior is challenging at every single school. more challenging than any time we have ever seen it before in the history of our school district. And so we began to think about how do we think differently about teaching and learning? How do we break this barrier that we see with student behavior being such a challenge that we're not able to get to the academic tasks as we're always managing those issues. And we saw some pretty impressive things there in terms of student behavior. Now, it wasn't perfect, but there was one class I visited and I thought was so cute. They had worked on to get the kids to sit in their squares. And that had been really a challenge to get them in their squares on the floor. And so they were in their squares on the floor, but there were 2 or 3 little boys that were still going around the circle, but they were doing it in their square. And it was just to see, I mean, they still had the energy there, but they knew that they had a space there. I think we just have to face our students are not having been taught much about behavior. I talked with one parent who literally said to me, bless her heart, I disagree with her, but that's her opinion. I have never said no to my child. I don't believe in saying no to my child. So it's kind of interesting, but we, even very experienced veteran teachers are saying the behavior is more challenging. So how do we turn that around, in a positive way? And we saw a lot of very good student behavior. We saw what influences student behavior, and that is engagement. And we saw a lot of engagement. Many years ago, there was a instructional delivery system that was associated with Madeline Hunter. And that kind of went by the wayside. Now it's coming back again because so much of what was in that model we're finding still to be very, very true. One of the things I observed in the classrooms, what's different? One of the things I observed in the classrooms are significantly more student talk. And they're talking about things at a much higher level and with each other, as well as with the teacher. So in many classrooms where it's 90% teacher talk and 10% student talk, the classrooms that I saw, it was very equal. It was probably 50-50. And students had an opportunity to talk, but they were talking about the right things. It was both time, in terms of how much they were speaking, but the quality of what they were talking about was higher. But there was a lot, as Clerk mentioned, of student movement. We saw a lot of that in the activities that students were doing. I don't know if any of you have had a very active child, but I've had a very active child. And that movement of getting up and doing things directs that energy in a positive way toward learning, as opposed to all the energy that we project out to get kids to sit in that desk and be quiet and listen. And so saw that movement in a very productive way and very purposeful, but very helpful for kids who are high energy kids. The other thing that I saw, and I talked to a couple of staff about, was the inclusivity of the classrooms. And so children who were shy, children who were new to the English language, children who had maybe some other issues, there was a conscious effort by not only the teacher, but by the students to bring them into what was going on. And you see us come there, and they wouldn't move forward until that child came as part of that group. And that's not what we always see. Hopefully we see it a lot, but that's not what we always see. And so that inclusivity, I thought was amazing. He was talking about one little girl in one of the classes I was in, she didn't speak any English, but how she was able to still participate as she was learning English. And I thought that was interesting. I had a chance to talk with teachers. Generally, the teachers that we spoke with, and I'm sure that's part of our visit, so we know that, but they talked about the satisfaction in doing their job was greater than it had been in many years. And one that was on the panel said it literally saved her career because it gave her a chance to go back to doing the things that she enjoyed, joyful learning, and felt that we had lost some of that joy in teaching and learning over the last several years. And and then it mentioned earlier about how you just integrate it into the content. There was one class I had a chance to see, and a couple of others were, I think, in the room at the time. But the teacher was teaching, I believe, 5th grade, the difference between literal and figurative objects, and so they passed around pictures, and they were beautiful pictures of the heart, and some were drawings, some were artistic, some were romantic kind of pictures, and the others were medical kinds of pictures. They looked at what the heart looks like and how it functions, and they would pass them around. They talk about, is this literal or is this figurative? And the teacher threw in one or two that were a little of both to see. Some of the brighter students would pick up that it could be both. But by the end of the lesson, all of the students were able to say, this is literal. This is the real heart. And this is somebody's rendering of that heart and the emotions and things with the heart. So that lesson had art just embedded in it, but it didn't change the content. The content was what's literal and what's figurative. And students were able to do that at a very high level. So you just saw a lot of things that, number one, improved engagement, improved movement. We saw students that were not 100%, not perfect, but the vast majority of students, classes I listed, were engaged in the learning and seemed to enjoy what they were doing. And I think a lot of us grabbed kids and said, do you like this, kind of thing. You like coming to school here. And the response was very positive about what they were doing in the school. So that's just kind of some of the observations and things in visited classrooms that just struck me is more teacher taught, higher level talking, more movement, more activity, and ways to help children learn through the arts. But it's not, as you said, it's not a new content. It's not a new, it's how we teach what we already have. Joy is not here today, but she had mentioned, and a couple of others had mentioned, that this fits very well with CK, learning, CKL, what is the acronym? Thank you. I thought I'd have this wrong. That's what you get when you're rushing, your brain's kind of going. But it fits into our curriculum very nicely. And in fact, I think one of the schools was using that curriculum as their curriculum as well. So those are just some observations. I'd like the rest of you to share what you saw, what you liked, what you didn't like. We're not coming with the silver bullet, everything's perfect. But we saw enough, I think, that it makes this worth our effort. And my last comment, and I'll be quiet, Amanda and I had this conversation on several occasions. If we don't start offering some different things within the traditional public school system, we're going to lose our students to charter schools and to other kinds of programs. And so do we have an obligation as a school district to offer parents some choice as well? And so this was an area, we have a strong community that's supportive of the arts. We have so many people in the arts in our region and area who can help and support our schools. And so those are things. Okay, I'll be quiet. Amanda, you talk.
You're really good. Well, I want to add to that, and then we'll try to go through the room. First, I want to remind everyone who we have in the room just one more time. So Mark is one of our parents who's here. Okay, then we have 2 assistant principals, we have 2 principals, and then we have 2 instructional coaches. And so we also had some other parents who were up there with us. And I know everyone introduced themselves, but just in case, so as you are thinking of things, but we had some other parents with us, and we had 2 teachers. We had an art teacher with us, and also music, right? Music, who was with us too. And so just as we were thinking of questions and things that you want to share, and I'm sure everyone has so many good things. I do want to add that I played with some of the things that we saw out there with my high school students, and it was fun. They had a good time with it. It was interesting to see what they would do with it, because we watched elementary school students, and it was good. So one of my comments to Dr. Cleveland is that I felt that some of the things that we watched there were things that I remember doing in school when I was young. And I feel like in some ways we've actually just gotten away from it because we perhaps just became so focused on our testing and all those things, which of course are always important. And so as I looked at it, I didn't feel like it was so, I mean, that first school, they have a lot of different things that they implement, but I didn't feel like it was so far away from some of the ways that we were taught when we were young, to integrate some of those, let's look at all these different art images. And I really had, we only watched a few classes, but I really have had fun in my own classes, just using those tools in my classes. Even playing with some of the focusing that they did some different things to help to focus the kids, which we saw helped in a huge way in their behavior. I think every teacher, everyone who was in there, as we watched just the behavior portion of it, I think we were like, this is something we need to do in our whole district. There were so many good things that you could see that came from that. And so I just wanted to add a couple of those thoughts to it as we go through. So would we rather, do you want to just go through everyone, or would you rather go to questions?
I'd like everyone to share what
Okay.
they saw and give them a chance.
Okay. So why don't we everyone kind of gather your thoughts for a second. You don't have to talk forever, but also feel like you can get all your thoughts out. I'm gonna totally pick on Amy because I just keep thinking that she should be our first one because she became my best friend on the trip. She sat with me on the plane for an hour. So I'm gonna give her a second to gather her thoughts just for a moment. But it really, I think for me, it was a good trip. It was really interesting to see the way that these practices, and it doesn't have to, we still get the content, we do all of those things, but it's just, to me, it's a teacher's toolbox and how we can teach this content. So Amy, you ready?
I'm ready. That's a perfect segue, actually. I want to touch on two things. The acting right piece, I feel like it gives students ownership of themselves and their behaviors. So we're explicitly teaching focus, concentration, and cooperation. And the language is, you are in control of your body. And students are metacognitively thinking, okay, I'm in control of my voice. I'm in control of how I use my physical space. I'm in control of what I think and what I say and how I act. And I love that empowerment for students. We're not telling students what you're doing is right or wrong. We're asking them to consider, how are your actions affecting the group as a whole? So there's that really collaborative sense, and then that sense of ownership and empowerment for students. So I really appreciated that, and we did see that in action in the classrooms. And the second piece that I thought was really fun was a math lesson, and they were using our Eureka math lesson, which is part of our GVC. In third grade, they were introducing repeated addition, and the teacher threw up an image of hands, yes, like this, precisely like this, but with two hands, and she had two focus questions. How many fingers do you see, and how do you count them? And then they had turn and talk, and then they all came up with how they counted them, different ways of repeated addition, some counted by one, some counted by two, some counted by fives, and then they used their whiteboards to show all the regular math, right, with arrays and number sentences and bonds and all the things that we're typically already doing in our schools. And then she challenged them, okay, erase. All right, she threw up another one. And it got progressively harder as more hands showed up. And these students at the beginning of the school year were successfully finding multiples of, 12 times 5. And then just to mess with them, she threw up a pictograph of a bunch of hands, and they all went, they all counted by 5, so it was fun. But what I saw was that part of that reading arts piece that was not vastly different from what our teachers are already doing. And so it was able to make me feel more comfortable as a teacher that I'm not going to ask teachers to recreate the wheel. We can use the GVC we already have and just engage students in a slightly different way.
Thanks.
You're on.
Yeah, coming into it from a behavior standpoint, because we're dealing with behaviors every day. As I was watching the students in class, I was picturing kids we see in our school every day, and when they were getting, kids were off task, and how quickly the teachers are able to get them back. Like she said, you're in control of your, of your body, and the kids really, oh yeah, like they recognize that, oh yeah, it is me. It's not, anybody else. But yeah, especially we weren't seeing, the kids are kids, and they were paying attention. If they started to lose focus, all of a sudden, the teacher had them right back into it. So they did have the techniques in place. The kids knew the routines, the procedures right away, and all different age groups. It was from, I think the youngest we saw was first grade. But the kids knew that, when they were going over, the little girl was chewing on her hair and like, are you in control of your body? And then, as she learned not to do that, reinforced it. Good job. You are in control. Just made her feel good about, I did it. I am in control. So, but yeah, just from the behavior standpoint, I saw a lot of really good things that we can implement.
So I went with a couple different lenses, but one that was very important to me was the idea of inclusivity, especially with special education students. So both parents that I brought had students with pretty significant special education needs. And they both spoke at length about all of the positive initiatives that this could be a part of their students' program of learning too. So in Belmar, every classroom we saw had students that had special education needs. And in every case, just as Dr. Cleveland mentioned, they were brought into the class and brought into the program just as much as any other student. In fact, you probably couldn't tell in most cases which students had learning needs and which ones did not. So the idea that we can include all students in these learning opportunities is very exciting to me. The joy and the collaboration that I saw in the teachers is a piece that I think is very, very important. It's something that we've been dealing with as a challenge as far as retention of staff and the ability to really ignite that passion in what they're doing. And that was across every component of every part of that campus that we saw. People literally had to say, what's the best part of your job? I have joy every day. I mean, that was their answer every day. So that idea that they have ownership in the art of how they teach, I think is a very important component for us to consider as we move forward. And then one thing that struck me over and over again, because I'd read the book twice before I went, it's really different to see it in person. And just the power of having that professional development. And this is why I would encourage you to consider the financial aspect, which I know is a lot. But the power in being able to see it and experience it with the person that trains you directly was so much stronger than what I had read in the book. And then immediately going back to the book and being able to make that connection of, oh, that's what he meant when he was talking about these pieces. And now I can see what this would look like in our classroom and in our experiences. So I want to advocate that that piece is going to be so critically important as we think about how do we train our staff. I can train them in how to work on curriculum. That's not a difficult part. I don't know if we can recreate the acting right just with a book. I think it's going to be critically important that we have that model for really how to teach behavior as we move forward. So those are my 2 cents.
You've heard me talk enough. I want to mention one thing. Throughout the discussions and all that, it has been brought up that we don't want to lose the rigor of what we have in the classroom. And to that, my response to that is that it's not like the arts are not rigorous. The arts are some of the most rigorous activities you'll find. But some of the most rigorous, disciplined people I know are artists and actors and dancers and musicians. So that's, if anything, I think students will learn a little bit more about rigor having to engage in these different art forms. So I just want to throw that out there because that has been a question that has come up before. That's my biased opinion about the arts.
All right, so I kind of came into this, again, as a parent, but as a skeptic, right?
He was super skeptical.
I'm
And you need one of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm a software engineer by trade, and so the thought of bringing an integrated arts program, really was like, what is this? What's going on in school? But I will say, after attending, it completely changed my mindset, and I'm on board with integrated arts. So I kind of broke this out, took a couple notes here, broke it out into like the good, the bad, and the ugly. A lot of the bad and the ugly from your presentation, like totally alleviated that because I think you guys are on a good path forward. But just some of the good stuff that I saw, again, the Focus 5 stuff, the acting right, just seeing the behavioral changes in kids, how they're implementing that was huge. And I think one note that I took here is they have cooperative social learning is the way that they described it, right? And so it's not just, the teacher teaching, the students listening, it's the students actually engaging with one another. And that was huge. the amount of students teaching other students was incredible, even from as young as kindergarten and first graders. Also, whenever someone would mess up, or do something that wasn't right, they made them use I statements to correct it. What could I have done differently, right? And to me, that's kind of raising leaders, right? What could you have done to change the situation? Not, hey, I'm blaming so-and-so for something that went wrong. What could you have done differently? Hey, I could have pulled them into my group. I could have went to this other group, things like that. Let's see, like I said, a lot of the stuff that I put for bad, you actually addressed, but a couple of things here.
I stole your notes.
Yeah. If it's not done right, if people aren't properly trained, I think it can quickly turn into art projects, right? Which is why the training and that stuff is so important. Just seeing that in action was huge for me. And then the funding piece, right? That's the ugly to me is how are you guys gonna fund this? And then really the teachers getting on board, right? It's really hard for a teacher, I think, to hide in this model. It's a really different way of teaching, and so you really need that buy-in from teachers. One of my concerns is, we do live in Rio Rancho, and it might be hard to get teachers to come up and teach in Rio Rancho, so that's something that I think we might need to look at or address. Maybe you guys have already thought about that, but again, a lot more good than bad than what I saw. And coming in as a skeptic, I'm really on board with integrated arts.
One of the things that I saw and I appreciate the most is the common language between every single teacher in every single classroom, whether it was the gym or they're at the playground or every classroom, they use that. Are you the boss of your brain, or are you calm and focused? And it was used with everyone, and just having that buy-in piece for that behavior for the students, because they all have the same language and all the teachers were using it. I think it'd be super, super great to have that.
I put you at the end.
I'm gonna give an example. It was something that I told.
I'm gonna show you all my pictures.
I was like, how can I make that hand picture work? There's this happened too. It was something that I told my staff the other day because I wanted them to visualize what we saw because they weren't there. So, it was trying to alleviate some misconceptions and talk about some fears that they had because we've been talking about this, like what's going on and what's happening. So I said, okay, picture Washington crossing the Delaware. Does everybody have that picture in their mind? Do I have it? Okay. So I told them that. I said it was a picture that we have in our library, hanging up in our library, but the conversation in this fifth grade classroom wasn't about that picture. It wasn't about Washington crossing the Delaware. It actually had to do with water and an ecosystem. And so that may have been one of the pictures that was laying out on the floor for kids to look at. And so they were analyzing blue pictures of either the ocean or an ecosystem or whatever it may be. And so these kids were studying these pictures. So they had a couple of minutes to study that and look at that. And all I remember is this kid, I couldn't see the picture that this kid was looking at, but the amount of descriptive language that he was using to describe this painting, it was about toxic waste in an ecosystem. And it was a hand just a hand lifting up the ocean, and it had all this toxic waste underneath it. So he was describing all of this information about it. And and each kid just being able to look at the images, to be able to describe that, it's kind of what Dr. Cleveland was saying. Everyone in the classroom had access to that learning, and they could describe something in their own ways. They didn't have to read print. They didn't have to really be versed in the English language to be able to participate. But everyone was able to interact and engage with one another. They did turn and talk and describe what they were learning and some of the things that they were talking about. But the lesson led into a descriptive writing in fifth grade, and so that's what it led into. Was they were writing about a specific piece. But what I saw, and it jogged my memory, Dr. Cleveland, sorry again, jogged my memory. In another classroom, every child was engaged. They were using different tools to be able to engage English language learners, to be able to pull them into the content, no matter what language they were speaking, whether it was Spanish or another language. The teacher was using different tools to be able to help them access the content. And And that was something that I thought was very powerful, was that no matter who steps into your classroom, because we have, Suzanne can tell us, like, there's multiple languages in all of our schools, not just Spanish, that each kid was able to draw from their own expertise, to be able to look at an image and to be able to either talk about what they learned from that, be able to speak to someone else, or use a translator app that they were using to be able to discuss with their peers. And I thought that was pretty cool that they were using technology, they were using art, visual art, and then they were also cooperating with one another in the classroom. And I thought that was pretty cool, to be able to see that in action, to be able to see all kids. Like Jim said, you wouldn't know, but you know, that was one piece that I did see, was that language piece that they were able to interact and engage with.
I'm like trying to,
Yeah,
what is left? I shared this story when we had visited the school. So we watched a first grade class, and they were doing the cooperation circle, or the actors toolbox. So at one point, when they're supposed to make tableau, they formed their group. They had their, I think that he had connected it back to the CKLA vocabulary word of the day. So he wanted to ensure that they had understanding of that vocabulary. And so I kind of sat on the floor next to these students, and it was a group of 3 girls. And the idea of planning for the tableau is that each individual student gets to share what they're thinking, what they would like to build. So it was important that they're each sharing and they're each listening to the others share. And one girl, it came to her, and she started sharing, and one of the other girls started laughing. And I was shocked that, you know, the first grade girl looked at her and she said, you know, it really hurts my feelings when you laugh at me when I'm trying to share. Can you please stop? And the girl said, oh, okay, I'm sorry. And she stopped laughing, they shared, and it was like this moment where no adult had to intervene. Nobody was trying to say, you know, we need to cooperate. They handled it on their own. But it all goes back to that constant language that the adults in every setting were setting for the students. So lots of I statements. I was extremely impressed with, you know, as soon as a student would start to say, well, he did this, the teacher or the facilitator would say, let's change that. Can you restate that? Starting with I, what can you change? And again, that was in the first grade class, and I was blown away that they had that language to communicate. So that was definitely a positive. And then also thinking of it from the curriculum lens, is that we have the opportunity to see the school that is using CKLA, and we're using some Eureka lessons as well, which both we already have in our classrooms. And the thing that made me feel more comfortable from a teacher lens is the instructional coach said at the beginning, we were just asking teachers to have maybe one lesson a week that they were intentionally planning for. So that word kind of stuck within the back of my mind, that's really what it is. It's just intentional planning with what you already have. And it's not changing everything. It might just be a 10-minute increment in this one lesson, and you're challenging yourself to find those moments, and then eventually you're building that toolbox for yourself. So I think that it's a lot more accessible to teachers, and it's not as overwhelming. So yeah, lots of things.
Well, let me add one, and I talked with Beth, I don't know if you did, Beth Miller could not be here
We
today.
talked in the carpet.
And there's a couple things she asked me to share. She went, and she was kind of the skeptic too. She said she was really concerned about rigor being one of the items, and she came away with a lot of positives. She also came away with some things you just must do. One of them was the professional development is absolutely essential. If you don't have it, it isn't going to work. So she came away with that. We've got to be consistent with the professional development. The other, you know, what we saw in the first school, the way it's integrated is very different than the second. Second was more content driven through units and more show what you know.
And the first was more just integrated into everything that they did, though the first school had been at it longer than the second. So that's probably to be expected. But she kind of came away with, start slow and grow, get the behavior under control first. And then the one thing that really kind of struck her is what the second director said is the integration must always be meaningful. So you don't do it just to do it. You integrate it when it really truly improves the teaching and learning of that particular content. And I think we were learning some of the things they did the second. We see those in our schools here all the time. Special units they worked on, and then they show what they've learned through a variety of different things. So I very much agree. We have folks doing many of those things now. I would say it's probably our strongest teachers. But she said, go slow now to go fast later. And that's something she wanted me to share today.
Okay. Well, you can go to questions from the board. I don't know, Jeff, do you want to go first and questions or comments right now, or?
Well, I just wanted to see if Kurt, I'm not sure if you explained the Focus 5 that you said you was going to come back to. Did I miss that at all?
I may have just mentioned it, or it's on the slide. Yeah, Focus 5 is simply, it's about a dozen teaching artists who have their specialties, and Focus 5 refers to, if I can remember, reading, writing, mathematics, science, five
It's kind of like
subject
CPMA.
Yeah, exactly. But they're a consortium of teaching artists who provide professional development across the country. So it's somebody we would have to engage in a partnership with to engage their services. But they're phenomenal. We've had a lot of their teaching artists come out for a partnership with NMR, and they everyone we've had from Focus 5 is top notch. We saw that again. I hope that answers.
It is, yeah, I was just curious. You said he was going.
I think I had it on a slide and then
All right, that's
lied
fine.
and said it.
That's all I have for now.
All right, Gary?
I had a question for the principals first, and compare the average class size that you saw compared to your average class size here.
The class sizes, I specifically asked, their total enrollment is smaller at the school. At Belmar School of Integrated Arts, it is smaller than our total enrollment. But average class sizes, I would say about the same. I went to kindergarten class, fifth grade class, third grade class. It was about 20, 23, 24, depending on whichever class it was. But they were, like every class that I walked into, I counted the kinder kids because I was curious, because they don't have EAs. And I was like, where's your EA? You have over 15 kids in this classroom. They said, Colorado doesn't do that. And I'm like, oh, we're very lucky in New Mexico in some aspects. So those were things that I was asking, but on average, I would say they were pretty in line with us. But total enrollment, like Dr. Schmidt said, was a little bit lower, but they are closing schools in the Denver metropolitan area and combining, and so their enrollments are jumping because they're closing schools.
And how long have they had the integrated arts program in place?
Belmar, 7 years. The second school, which is a different model, it's a magnet school, and they're very focused on studio classes with art, music, drama, and dance. So probably the model we want to reach more toward is Belmar, and they've been at for 7 years. And yeah.
And their related arts is very, very similar to ours. They have all of the aspects of what our related arts teams do.
They have
Including PE.
Yeah.
Art, PE, and music, and they don't have STEAM, which we have.
They did not include library in their special schedules.
But they do have
a library.
The couple of things that concern me are the professional development for the teachers, because it has to be right. What concerns me is these teachers are parents, they have 6 subjects, maybe 7 subjects they already teach. And they're gonna be required to get professional development in 7 subjects or behavioral management, whatever the professional development plan is according to our strategic plan. And now we have another layer, and also they have a life. So that concerns me that sometimes we're really a good district, but the layers of professional development we put on our teachers is kind of overwhelming to them. So I don't think it's a fact that a teacher blocks the professional development. I think it's the fact that they're just so overwhelmed and now they're gonna ask me this. So I think there does need to be a magic bullet by all the leaders in this room that if we're really gonna have an integrated arts program in a couple of schools to start off with, how are we going to allow that teacher to go home and want to come back to work the next day? Because I don't think the money's the issue on the professional development. I don't think it's that much. Personally.
Let me add something. Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, I want to add, so our music teacher who was there,
Daniela.
yeah, so it was actually amazing to kind of watch her face, because I think if you saw what you saw, I think what she saw the behavior that they were teaching. It was like this relief, actually. It wasn't like, oh gosh, I have to learn something new. And it's not something it's different, but when you see what the kids are doing, as a new teacher, and think about that place when you were a brand new teacher and the overwhelmingness of that, and then you go into a classroom and kids are crazy and you're like, I learned in school what to do and I don't know what to do. It gives you all of those tools. And so what may seem, I think initially, if we can show them it in action, I don't think it'll be so overwhelming, because when you see it, you're just like, oh gosh, this is what I've always needed in my life, because I need these tools to help me with my students. And so I think if we can really show them that, because it was interesting, I think everyone that was there was just like, oh, this is like, everyone needs this. And it wasn't so crazy big that you're like, I can never do this. It was like, this is totally doable. This is something that we can do. So what you had to.
Thank you. I was just going to say that by and large, and overwhelmingly, what I hear back from teachers is the burden of behavior in the classroom. And so if we can help to alleviate that and teach strategies that will really work with students, that gives them so much more time and freedom to engage in all the other curricular materials, that I think we're going to, we put heavy investment early on in how do we help the behavioral component of this. That's going to pay off dividends over time for all the other things that we want to do. And Dr. Schmidt had in the plan, part of what we're looking at is incorporating additional planning time and collaboration time within their schedule, so their duty day, so that we can look at the curricular pieces with them, so that these PD times that we have already planned into our schedule, we would then utilize for acting right and the other components. So we are trying to be thoughtful about that, because the last thing we want to do is run teachers away. But I will tell you, every one of our teachers will tell us, help us with behavior and we can do all the rest.
That's
So-
what, sorry, I
so-
was gonna say that
yeah.
they come in, our teachers say, we just wanna teach. And then if they could do that, they're on board for whatever we have.
So,
I had one teacher say to me, I'm sorry, Gary, said to me, I would try anything.
Right.
Given the behavior and the challenge I have right now in the classroom, I would try anything. Because what we're doing right now isn't working. That's exactly what she said.
so if I could, from a parent standpoint, and I know this community, I think I know this community, I know that's what the teachers are saying. The community's saying, where's the data? And so all the paperwork I've read about integrated arts in Denver, I still haven't seen any data of academic improvement. So I think that's a good point you bring up. I don't argue that the teachers, I think they're overwhelmed, and when you give them the professional development, they're still gonna be overwhelmed, but that's just a respectful disagreement. But then from the community standpoint, when we report on academic achievement at these 2 schools, is it staying the same? I mean, if we're gonna show attendance improvement or behavioral improvement, let's show the data of the academic achievement. And then with that being said, what I'd like to also see as a board member is our growth in these two schools. Because I think it would be a good thing for the Rio Rancho community. But then we gotta come back and say, if this is our 0 year, this is our population at these two schools, what's our population next year? What's the population? And that's where we're showing our community, yeah, we are doing something better than the charter schools or better than the other schools. Because I think it is a good program. I just worry about a teacher teaching and doing professional development. Yeah.
For acting right, I think for Focus 5, their model is to come in during the school day and do hands-on training in the moment with the students. So it's not like hours after the school day.
We were actually there while he was training.
Yes,
But if you have other professional developments from other disciplines during the school day, and then all of a sudden you get a call from the parent saying, my teacher had a sub again? Yeah, but we're doing professional development. I mean, I'm just saying all that has to balance. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I think you missed this slide, but
No, I saw that in
You
your.
did, oh,
report,
okay.
Yeah, I was
I'm trying-
talking about the achievement of the students.
No, that's,
Did I
the
miss
last
that?
bullet point, they're starting to see a growth in their achievement.
Oh, okay.
After a few years.
See, I see numbers on top, I don't see numbers on that last bullet.
Yeah,
And I didn't see it
because
on the original
I wanted some
report.
harder
Yeah.
data, but they haven't gotten back to me yet. So as soon as I get that, I'll be there.
No problem, that's what I'm saying.
And those are legitimate concerns. I mean, they really are. And we need to address them. I think the challenge we have is what we're doing right now so good we wouldn't want to change. And I think what we've got really strong data show that's not the case. So I do think the other elementary schools, whether it's a robotics or, we need to have some other choices at different schools that, again, we keep our curriculum, but maybe deliver it through some different approaches. And so it isn't a silver bullet. And I want to be really clear, that's not what we're saying here. This is a silver bullet. It's going to take, just change it and we don't have any more problems. But what we did see, some of the problems that we have right now that are very real to us, it seemed to make tremendous gains of students with behavior, with focus, with positive attitude about coming to school. And so we grab the kids, we talk to them, you like coming to school? You like what you're doing? And they were able to very easily verbalize how much they liked coming to school. And I think that, it's that engagement piece seemed to be, every student was involved. And I think that was part of it. It is not a silver bullet. And the piece of rigor would have to be addressed. We have to be sure that that's there and that we're continuing to build. What we do know is that the arts improve thinking and learning in the brain. We know that Einstein saw the theory of relativity, I can't talk today, relativity in his brain in terms of music before he was able to write it scientifically. And so we know that the arts and music, that helps the brain, it helps children learn. And that's, Einstein talked several times about how important music was in learning and what it meant in terms of his ability to create in terms of the theory of relativity and other scientific laws. So in music, thought in the brain, we thought music first. I love the story that was shared with me by Paul Ortolini many years ago, president of Intel. He was here. We were at a luncheon at Intel. And he said he wished Intel would fund the arts as much as they would fund math and science because he believed that it made such a difference. And he was a supporter of fine arts. But he did tell me, he said the only thing the founders of Intel had in common, they came from wealthy backgrounds, Ivy League backgrounds, not Ivy League backgrounds, there's tremendous diversity. The only thing they all had in common was they all played a musical instrument. And I thought that was very interesting. Yeah.
Can I just respond to you from a parent's perspective? So I went in with those same concerns, part of the community, obviously, engineering mind, thinking about the numbers. One thing that I think kind of changed my perspective on it was whenever they started talking about engagement, right? Like what Dr. Cleveland was talking about, how engaged the kids are, and then developing that love of learning early. I think that's the key aspect of part of this too. Is these kids love going to school. They love learning, and the academics are going to come, right? No one cares if you got an A in your first grade class, but if you have that love of learning early on, then you're set up for academic success later on. So that kind of mind shift really changed my approach as a parent too. Like, hey, I shouldn't care so much like how you're doing on this one test, whatever, but are you set up for success? Are you actually enjoying what you're doing at school? So.
Thank you.
Kirk, did you want to add?
I wanted to talk to you about the PD aspect of it. Dr. Schmidt opened more slots for the New Mexico Arts Professional Development that's been in our school district. And he offered that to Enchanted Hills and Sandy Vista. I've had an overwhelming response to that they want to go, that they want to sign up. I had to tell people, please no, because we can't function in a school full of subs. I mean, that would be great, but it can't happen that every single person goes to these. So we've had to limit a couple of our individuals to just a few of the PDs throughout the school year. But one of the big things that really resonated with me was one of the last PDs that they went to. I had a retired teacher go to it, and she said, you know what, Kurt, that was amazing. I can teach this in a whole different way, and I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna share it with everybody, because I know that some team members weren't able to go, and I thought, that's awesome, that's really great. Because she was excited again, and she was like, I can do this, and this is fun and engaging, and I'm like, cool, share it with everybody, but there's a want to do it. It's not one of the, I'm sorry, Mr. Tripp, sitting in PD going, really? Why am I here? And then to have people excited to be able to do it, that's what's encouraging to me, because you've been through PD that you're like, why am I here? And nobody has responded that way to me. They've all been excited about it, wanted to share share with their kids or colleagues. And so that was what was really cool, to be able to hear that.
That is good.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks. Your comment, I think, you partially answered one of my questions, and I know I'm getting to next year's list of items, so I know you might not have all the answers, but from a staffing perspective, how many, I know that the word's out there, like you said, you already have teachers concerned or excited or both. So what is your sense for how many teachers would want to stay, or how many teachers would how much teacher movement are you anticipating by needing to be able to place teachers, or do you have a good idea about that yet?
I can just speak in generalizations, but I would not guess a lot. Probably fewer than 15%. Wanting to leave for this purpose. We had 90% retention last year at my school, and almost everyone we talk to, almost every time we talk about it, is excited about this and wants to start working on it. And I have to keep telling them to slow down and not try it yet. So I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, but our staff is very excited about it.
Yeah, they wanted to know more about it.
They wanted to
That's
know more
like,
about
yeah,
it.
That's the same
Right.
thing, like just, keep working on this year.
And I think even at Sandy Vista, it's what's next? We're like, slow down, slow down. We're gonna take it one step at a time. We're just learning right now. And that was just answered questions too, to be able to answer questions and give people honest feedback. Honestly, I can say just engaging with staff members the last 3 years at Sandy Vista, that there will be some individuals that may choose to leave, and that's fine. But coming at it from an angle of, we all want to be on the same page. We all want our kids to be able to move from preschool, kindergarten, all the way up and into middle school and high school with the same common language of understanding and being able to interact with one another in a positive way, to be able to take ownership of their own behavior and learning. And as a school, I did it with another program, and I don't want to name programs, but I did it with another program. But to be able to see a group of 300 kindergartners at an assembly, and you play a piece of music or you say something, to have kids respond and then be able to control their bodies and physically respond in a snap, 300 of them. It's amazing. But we were talking about different ways that this could be implemented. Cafeteria, in outside on the playground, in our classrooms, and then to be able to, for it to translate between schools that are close to one another, because we do trade kids, that they have that common language all the time, that's gonna be really impactful to see.
One other, I'm sorry.
Sorry, but yes, there are people that I can see that might not be comfortable with children not sitting in their desk all day long, and might not be comfortable with them sitting on their dot all day long. And as a former kindergarten teacher, it really bothers me to see kids sitting a majority of the day, because I don't think that that's developmentally appropriate. And so, like, that's gonna be a struggle, because we do have some teachers that I have to teach the curriculum. It's my guaranteed viable curriculum. I have to teach the standards, I have to teach this math, and they have to sit here all day long and do this worksheet.
Mm-hmm.
And there are individuals that still have that mindset, and so this will be uncomfortable for them.
One of the things to consider is that I'm sure there are teachers around the district at other schools who would want to be part of this. So I think, and that's one thing we need to make sure that's stressed, is that you will have a job, that you will not lose the job.
Well, that's the second, I guess, part to my question is, have we engaged the union at all about kind of their stance and potentially, like, you know, because I could see you potentially could have more teachers that want to participate in this. And Gary, I kind of felt opposite, maybe potentially of you in the acting right. I could see all of our elementary schools say, well, we need this here too, why don't we have it? And so yes, there's the professional development part, but there's also that equity piece of them thinking, well, why are they getting, you know, this money to get this training when we all need that? And so being able to, you know, be open-minded to the fact that if it works well and we monitor it, do we have the capacity to replicate it in other schools and offer that to other schools?
I think to that point is that we should start using the word pilot, because that's what this is. We're trying this out at these two schools. And as I said, the assessment piece, we need continual improvement, continual assessment. I mean, we'll get to the end of year 3 and be like, crap, this isn't working. I mean, that could possibly happen. But I think if we, put a context around it, that these are pilots, I think that's an easier way to describe it.
Yeah.
And if you want to give us $1 million for professional development, I mean, we'll do it all this way.
But to you make a really good point. Yeah, we've had a couple of other elementary schools said if they change their mind and they don't want to do it, we really want to do it. So it may be that we would want to replicate it. But there are also some other types of magnets that perhaps would also be attractive. And still the curriculum stays the same. How you deliver it's a little bit different. But I know 2 schools that have said if they decide they don't want it, we're next in line. And so we may have other schools come forward. And that's a really good point. If it's really good, we want to replicate it, there'd be nothing really to keep us from doing that. The other is once you start developing capacity within your district, then some of those costs are not as much, because you end up then with people in the district that are trained to be able to assist. But we definitely very much in terms of the mindset wanted to start small. Wanted to start, small with 2 schools that we thought had the ability and aptitude to really make it work. And so this would be a hard thing, I think, to implement district-wide.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about like arts integration as a whole, but I'm talking about even just the behavioral approach. Because again, like the consistency, right? And of course, like if you bring that child from kindergarten through 5th grade and they've already then learned to control their behavior, that's gonna make our middle school teachers' life that much easier. But if there's not that consistency district-wide, yes, we're maybe reducing behavioral issues in some areas, but not others. So being able, because to your point, that's something that we hear constantly from our staff, is that behavior is an issue and we need to do something. And so I think this is a great start. My concern is just, it would be nice to be able to do something for everybody, but I mean, and I get parts of immigration, yes, these are pilot programs and we're not going to turn all of our schools into.
Well, acting right, though it's been integrated in both these schools, acting right can stand on its own.
That was my.
And so it's not tied necessarily that it has to be integrated by its program.
And the active rate program is designed from, there's a portion of the book that talks about for pre-K. So pre-K through with high schoolers. So if it does what it's intended to, and if it works, I can potentially see adoption process, if that's the way people want to go.
And to your point, I mean, I like the fact that you are making it very clear that it's important to bring him here to do the training and not go to a trainer model. I don't know, Mike and Sal, you guys dating myself, but maybe I'm dating you guys worse. So in law enforcement, there was a guy named George Thompson, I believe was his name, that developed this verbal judo, which was about, speaking to people, de-escalating situations, way before like crisis intervention was really a thing. And he would come here and he taught my cadet class and he's since passed away, but having the creator of the approach, being able to teach them is a huge benefit to be able to provide that to our teachers. I think it's extremely important. I support that fully.
And that's the goal, is to bring him.
Yeah.
What's cool. There are people, I would dare say, equally as versed in the program that whom he has trained.
Right.
To deliver that too, but.
It just reminded me of that, because it was the same thing, right? Like there's other, you could become a instructor or a teacher in verbal judo, but like to have the guy with them, with.
But, yeah, we wouldn't want to send a few people.
Right.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, he did it, so he did it with us, and we lost, like if we weren't all in the right groups and stuff, it's like, you lost, and why did you lose? Because you're thinking so much about yourselves. You were like, okay, let me try again. He is really good, and so I think it is good. Amy was saying that same thing, we're up there, that's the model that we really wanted to take a look at, is having him come in.
And then I have like one more question. Have we thought much about how we would handle the requests for transfers both in and out of those schools? Like, are we gonna provide transportation to those families that opt in or opt out? Would that be the students that maybe wanna opt out, we provide transportation for, but not opting in, providing transportation for? Because I know transportation is always our biggest issue, so have we thought that far?
We looked at it, and I just can't see with the resources that we have, that parents who want to opt out, but they probably end up having to do their own transportation, just like they do now. They wanted to move to a school that's not their school attendance area. And it's interesting, when we did the survey for pre-K, it came back really surprising to me that the majority of parents, transportation wouldn't change their decision about what they would do for their kids. And so we already have a lot of that, and we have parents who make a choice, their child to go to a certain school for certain reason. But I don't know that, I don't think we will have the resources to provide transportation unless you would go like the second school we visited, that Aurora, Colorado School District has gone to open for the whole district. And they've gone to super stops, and so they shuttle in a completely different way to and from than we do. And that would be a completely separate system. We could do that. But all schools are schools of choice down in Aurora. And you get your kid and they shuttle. I don't know, we didn't look at their bus schedule. It sounded like a really interesting challenge to me, how we could do it. But Colorado's very different too. I mean, there's like one of our former board members who lived in Colorado Springs said, you paid extra for bus transportation, and most people, you didn't have the same commitment to public school to and from transportation we have. And I'm glad we have that. I'm glad we have a strong commitment. But I don't think we would be able to manage every child who wanted to go somewhere else. Parents could make that choice. They'd have to choose probably to drive their kids.
Yeah, I just think I agree with you. I just think it's important to make sure that that's communicated well to.
And that goes along with this year zero, just education. That's just educating people on everything.
Exactly.
And I think that's when Missouri will get a better feel for that, of where our community is and if that is gonna be an issue. I just keep thinking about, with the opening of some of the charter schools that have come up, and we've lost some of our enrollment to that, like the amount of our enrollment. And that shows that parents are willing to take their other students in places. And so, hopefully, those students who would really like to opt in have that opportunity. And if it's overwhelming, then maybe take a look at some other ways to do that. But we'll see as we go. Anything else? Any other questions or comments from?
I just want to make one comment, and I'm being a little bit sarcastic, so just know, I kind of am, but you want to sit in your desk all day and do workshops, your days are numbered anyway. Because that's not the school district we have been, and that's not the district we want to be. And so, but I think it's exacerbated now by the behavior that we're seeing. And I've never seen the level of frustration of teachers in terms of the behavior that they're facing with kids. And so we may do acting right in all schools. It's not absolutely tied to this, so most schools are using it. But we are at a very different point. The children that have come up the last few years, from COVID and on, they're not gonna be sitting at your desk and be quiet for a whole day kind of kids. They're just not. It's a different time, and but children do have to learn how to sit and listen and focus, or they're not gonna be successful. So how do we teach that without it being a mean, punitive, punish you for this? How do we help kids learn how to take responsibility for their own behavior? And we saw that a lot. And what I love is seeing the other kids correct, that's not what we do in this class, and that self-regulation that comes individually, but as a group of kids. I also just love seeing kids not left out, just separate, alone, not being integrated into the classroom.
Okay, well, with that, remember, so we'll be voting on whether or not we're willing to just kind of move forward with working on implementing this. And so if you have additional questions in the email that you think of in the next little bit, you'll have another opportunity to ask those questions in the board meeting tonight. But with that, we'll go ahead and,
Quick question. How is the proposal then simply to move forward, or is it moving forward with the financial commitment?
How did we write it into the agenda? I still haven't.
Oh, yeah, we would have to move forward with the financial commitment, or we don't have the resources to do the training. And I think we'd also have, and Beth asked this question, moving forward, that means working with families, working with parents, talking to parents, a dialogue going on, as we do move forward. But it has to be a financial commitment, because we have to know, but it's not a final approval of the program forever and ever, until we get a little further on down on the road. So for 1 year, we'd be looking at 50,000 to get started. That would be the commitment, would be 50,000.
And part of that, we can't move on grants or anything on that right now anyway, so that would be 50,000 that comes. I do think we should talk to our legislators though about this, as we're about to come up on January here. And if you think of the grand scheme of things, 50,000 is not that much to ask for something like this. And so
Junior money, I think, with the minimum $75,000.
Yeah,
That would be one legislator.
that would be.
Sherry texted me during the meeting that the Schumann Foundation might be a real good. They are very generous about some things. This seems to be right up their alley. And so maybe the Schumann Foundation, we could get them to fund the first year, since we have already budgeted for this year. But I think it just has to be really clear. Yeah, we're making a financial commitment. We'll go and try to find the resources, but we would have to have a commitment to start the professional development.
They're actually presenting a check at the next board meeting, so.
We need to figure out where
We're out poised and waiting for them at the door.
Okay, that's good to know. Does that help?
Yes, it's just, and remember, this is year zero, there would be, I can't think of financial commitment, there might be a down payment as we prepare for next year's professional development. Yeah, like the board, there might be a little bit there, yeah, that might be.
Okay. Okay, Any other questions on this? And then we can-
One last question, and this has been televised, right? So, in the past, we've been very concerned about people who maybe didn't have an opportunity,
So we'll
but
make
they have heard all of this, and it has been televised. So I guess I would want direction from you, how much do you want us to go over again? Would you like us to go over the PowerPoint, one more time? And you just kind of give us an idea of what you would like as a board in the regular board meeting, but this meeting has been posted and it has been televised.
I mean, I know I'm always the majority, but my feeling is that we do not go over it, that's the purpose of the workshop, and so we just bring it as part of business for action.
Yeah, I do feel better that this one is now broadcast, where we haven't been broadcast before, which is always made me feel a little. It could be good to go over the timeline briefly, but that's a mass, what we're looking at, or we could just move to vote or ask, any additional questions, the rest of the board, any thoughts?
I think you're right on. The only, just the additional is just the ultimate main three goals, the behavior, just the ultimate, the attendance and the achievement. I mean, those three things with what you're alluding to would be fine with me.
Brief.
Sure, just as brief as possible. But I think the public would like to hear, because that's what we're focused on, those three things.
We want to do whatever you want, and how much detail, you want to not do any or some. But again, it was a posted meeting and people didn't have an opportunity
Yeah,
to see
I think
here
that's
everything we've done.
I think
so.
we could do a brief, it's always kind of awkward where we're just talking to it anyway, so if we could do just something brief, and if you could just develop that in the next, couple of minutes.
Let's talk afterwards
Okay.
and just decide kind of how much and we'll try to keep it short to your point. We've gone through all of this.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's redundant, so that's,
Especially
again,
for the main-
I mean, yeah, that's the purpose of a workshop, that's the purpose of having it public, that's the purpose of having it streamed, and so no reason to go over it again.
There's one, the summary slide.
That would be great.
That-
Good. Good, thank you.
Yeah. Great. Okay.
And reading very slow.
I want you to actually sing a song about it.
We'd like to tell them.
Yeah, you guys can all act it out, actually. Your choice.
All right, are we good? Okay, we're gonna adjourn this meeting and we'll see you in the next.
I wish you all could have